Hey everyone. Let's make sure everything is up and working. I think it is. Yeah. So I've got about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I'm just having a quick look into routing on the front end, React router. I did a video just recently about kind of like a deep dive on a JS clone type thing. So I thought it'd be cool to do that for open source tools that I work with. I'm just going to make sure the volume's all good. No music though. Let me try get the music. Let me try get the music sorted out. Let's see. Hopefully. Just make sure it's all working. So the goal today for the next hour is basically so I've got the React router documentation here. I want to take an example off of this. So this is, I'm on the, let's jump to the dev branch actually. So React router v6, because that's what I've been playing around with recently. So I want to jump over to the docs. I want to go over to the get started goal. Okay, so the goal is to basically copy this. So I've got the roots. Yeah, so copy this to the app, make sure it works, and then remove React router DOM and get it to work, which I think it shouldn't be too hard because the very, very basics of routing is quite simple. But obviously this abstracts away a lot more complexity and it, works across different environments, etc. But yeah, if we can at least get the first bit, then that's a good place to start. So yeah, let's do that. And I think volume is okay. Let me know if the music is too loud, but I think that's okay. So the starting point. Yes, it's a starting point. So I've cloned React router and React. I guess it's the history package locally. So we're gonna have a quick look through the APIs there just to see what's going on. That will be a good starting point. But also we'll just have a look at routing in general. What's because there's a big difference between routing with a single page application, an SPA, which is often the case if you're doing client rendered React, and server side or static site rendering. It's all kind of all different things. So yeah, so what we'll do is in fact and I'm going to quickly change my keyboard because this one's going to be driving people nuts. It's too loud. So let me go get my keyboard. There we go. Sorry about that. Let's see. Get a quieter keyboard so it's not as noisy. There we go. Cool. So I'm going to jump into Playground and I'm just going to let's do npm init. So we're just going to use v as an example routing. So I'll just do target directory is not empty. I've already done one called routing before. So let's remove that. We're just going to do a React app here. I'm just going to stick with JavaScript, jump into routing, and open that up. So again, the goal here is to basically take this and be able to get it working without React router DOM. So let's see that in action first. So I've got Vite open here. I'm just going to make sure I install dependencies. I'm going to copy over, I guess, just this app, just as is. We'll jump into main.jsx. And we'll just paste that there, actually. Let's get rid of all the boilerplate as well. Just to, because we're going to have a look at the output sources and we're gonna kind of make sense of it all. So let's remove any CSS, let's remove the logo, let's remove this app. So we just have index.html, points to our main JS X, and in there we just have our app. And actually, let's also remove strict mode, because we're not going to do anything complicated yet. And let's just make sure we have prettier working as well. Cool. Get this select. There we go. Okay, so how does routing work in general? Let's comment this out for now, and let's just pop in an H1 here. Hello world. All right, so we're in kind of React land now. So this is an SPA, single page application. So these things kind of operate a bit differently. Historically, the way these things worked is if you think about just statically hosting a site, you have your index.html file in a directory, and if you run that, or if you serve this directory, and you go to whatever server, whatever port it's on, localhost 3000, for example, / it would just default, it looks for an index.html file in that directory, right? So if I just double click onto this, and I kind of use, if I try to use IntelliJ's built-in server, what we'll do here, so nothing's coming up, but that's just because it's HTML. Actually, what's maybe better is if I go over to, if I build this, if I just use a build, because this isn't ready to be rendered by the browser yet. So if I build this, wait for a moment, and so that outputs everything to a dist directory. So inside here we have an index.html file, which points to the assets. That's the way Vite builds it. Gives these assets, and then these assets are all hashed, etc. So that's fine. So if I jump over to this index.html file and I try open that, and I open up the terminal, if I go over to the network and I refresh, so I'm just opening this up, you can see that we have this index.html here. So it is pointing to index.html, and it's loading my index.html. So we can ignore this. Let's remove that just so it doesn't inject any additional scripts. So we have our index.html here. This is exactly what's loading on the left hand side, so that works fine. And this is all being rendered on this server. And if I go to the /dist, so I remove the index.html, it renders the same thing. It just defaults to looking for an index.html. Hey man, your yarn install look great. Is that what I want? Yeah. I've got this plugin called, well, I use Z Shell. So if you use Z Shell, there's, I think it's got the kind of yarn plugins with that. Yeah, and I use my Z Shell as well. So my Z Shell, I think it's part of this. So if you look into that, I'll just kind of leave this there. If you have a look into that, I think that's where it comes from. It gives you all these aliases for yarn. So when I do Y, that's just yarn, which is the same as yarn install. Same with things like yarn dev is just YD. So if I look at alias YD is yarn dev, so on and so forth. And there's a few Git ones as well. Actually, I use the Git ones, alias Git checkout, so on and so forth. So I am Asim. What's up, Asim? Yeah, have a look into Z Shell. So we have our index.html, kind of defaults to there, and I think different browsers might have slightly different variations, or depending on how you're hosting it, but typically it's going to look at the directory and it's going to look for index.html. And then anything else, depending on the server, depending on how it's implemented, it's either going to default back to index.html, or it's going to try find a file with that name. In this case, I'm searching this, it can't find it, so it's it's throwing an error. If I search index, it can't find it again, because it's not a directory. It doesn't know what to do with it. It's not a directory, it's not a file, it's not, in this case, it doesn't know how to handle that. But dist is fine, and if I go to index.html, that's fine, right? And actually, let's just pop something in here. let's remove these scripts just so we can make sure this is all working. And let's just do hi. So if I refresh this, we can see our hi. And again, if I remove this, dist hi is working fine. So how do you root with this style? And this is kind of old school. We're talking static pages here. Well, you can add another directory or you can add another file, right? So you can say, well, I want to add an about page. Oops. Not used to this keyboard. There we go. About. So I've added an about HTML. So can I go to just about? No, I don't think I can. And that's because, again, I looked for an about directory, which doesn't exist. But if I go to about.html, because again, it's just serving from this directory, and I change this to about, that works. Refresh that. So now we have routing, different HTML files. And if I take that one step further, because you don't typically want to add, or you don't generally want to add the .html for everything. You might want to add paths, etc., which would still work, but it's not the kind of, I guess it's not common. I can take this about, I can copy the HTML file, and I rename this back to index. So I have a dist directory, which defaults to, I guess, the index HTML, fine. And then if I go to /about, it's going to default to the about index HTML. And that's basically how that routing works. And that's fine. But of course, this doesn't work with React. And the reason for that, or it doesn't work with React for client rendered applications, I should say, out of the box, because they are naturally single page applications. Meaning it's only got essentially one HTML file, and all the routing happens within JavaScript. So if I get rid of all that, if I just rebuild it, this is where you see this about will disappear, or should disappear in a moment. And if I now serve this guy, and I think I can serve it just by doing, well, I can serve it just by doing a preview here, serve. There we go. When we look at the HTML, so if I look at the source code for this page, it's empty, it's a shell. And that's because it comes into the HTML file. We have this placeholder, and then it loads in the JavaScript, etc. And everything after that is JavaScript. When you go to a different URL, it's JavaScript. JavaScript loads that. And there's two main things that we, I guess, know about, or I know about, which is if you look into the window, you'll find a couple of things, one of which is the location, and the other one is history. We'll get to history after. They're also just available at the top level. So location basically gives you everything about the URL, right? So this location object is everything here. So if I go to /about, in this server, it knows to point it back to index.html. It knows it's a single page application, to point everything to index.html file. And if I go to location, it's got all the details. It's got the path. I'm on /about. This is localhost 5000, and I can add nested paths, etc. And it's all just going to work fine. And I can always get a location. And then basically what we can do is use this JavaScript to manipulate or to show different things. And I think that's basically your client side routing, right? So if we were to implement the most kind of naive routing possible, it may look something along the lines of let's just say const app is equal to, we can get location dot path name, let's just do a straight equals /about, then return h1 about, otherwise return let's just do home, right? So this is a poor man's routing, I think. So it's let me stop this and let me run the dev server, because this is dev server. If you can hear any, so I can hear a lot of background because my window's open. If you can hear, if the background noise is off-putting, let me know and I can close the window. So let me run dev. And refresh this guy. So this will be port 3000. So now it's home. Anything I do, it's home because it doesn't match /about basically. And if I go to /about, oops, it's going to match /about. And this is my assumption. This is how kind of the basis of React Router, right? It's just looking for the location, it's checking the paths, and it's based off of that, it's rendering different things. Of course, React Router has, you know, the parameters. It's got nested routing, and it works on different environments. There's a lot of hidden complexity there, but you know, that's kind of core from the browser perspective. This is what's doing. JavaScript is looking for the location. Based off of that, it's rendering something. So from that, we could basically render this app function. And I think in their example, they also had this router actually. So let's take the router. Well, let's take this entire example, just like this. Let's make sure that works. Router is not defined, of course. So here I would need to, so what I'm going to do is that's the example there. I'm going to go ahead and basically not implement or not install React Router for now, React Router DOM. And the goal is just to get this working, basically. And to be honest, I've got an idea of how to get this working just using the window location name for this scenario. But I thought it'd be good to just have a quick look. So I don't have too much time, but have a quick look into the, I guess based off the API, go into the React Router source code, just it's open source application, go into open source tool, so we can just have a look at the code and just see generally what it does. So that's what I've got here. So I guess we can start off with minimizing this, just in case there's, you know, just to see what, I guess what's going on in general. So I'll have a quick look through that, then I'll come back and try to implement the minimal possible to get this working. I imagine it may even, I mean, you can do it just with this one component, so it'll be interesting to see what's happening in these router and routes components. Yeah, and just see how that goes. And in fact, I should probably take the home and about functions as well. So home and about, and in fact, you know, I said I wouldn't, yeah, you know what? I said I wouldn't install it, but actually I kind of need to install it to make sure this works. And once I'm confident this works, I can remove it again. So I think I can just do, yarn install or yarn add React Router DOM, I believe. Just make sure. I skip that, npm. Where's the docs of this? Well, React Router DOM. Let's just do that next. I think that's it. So that's installed React Router DOM, and click install. Yeah, here we go. And history 5 actually. History 5. So let's also add history 5. And let's just, from the example, what we're going to do is we're just going to add. So getting started, this is the example we took. Let's just add this imports here. And let's go back to our app and refresh. Target container is not a DOM element. Do I need to restart this? Oh, no. All right. Roots cannot resolve roots. What am I doing wrong here? Doing something silly. Target container is not a DOM element. That's on JSX32. So why can't it find app here? It's because it's called roots. HTML roots. Okay. So yeah, this my index HTML I guess is called root. Yeah, that's the downside of copy and pasting things. Link is not defined, so let me just import. I believe I need link. There we go. Okay, so that's the app. We have a home and about page. Let's just so we can go back and forth. Let's do this. Instead of welcome, we'll just put the nav there. So we have a home and an about page. Home, about, that's fine. Okay, cool. So this is it working. Let's now remove React router DOM and get that to work. And kind of one thing to note as well is we can jump into the elements and just see what's going on here. From the nav perspective, really we're just rendering a couple of links. So it's just an A tag. Now, I think there's a few things going on. You can see that this is adding the slash, whereas we don't need to add it here. And if we do add it here, it's going to handle it for us. The other thing I think it handles is kind of things like nested routing, etc. It's going to help us with that. And other than that, when we render one, we can see the about. When we render the other, we can see the home. So it's not kind of hiding anything. It's removing it from the DOM completely. Okay, cool. So let's just do yarn remove React router DOM and history. And we'll basically remove that import and this should all fail. And that's fine. Cool. So this is going to complain. Router is not defined, so on and so forth. That's fine. Okay. So let's look at, I guess we'll look at router quickly, see what that does. We'll have a quick look at roots, try to dive the code and see what that does, and then root. And what I'll do is we'll do that for 15-20 minutes or so, not too long. And then we'll just try to kind of mock something here. That's probably a good starting point. All right, let's do that. So I'm going to pop this to the side. This will be our reference. And so I've got the dev branch. So this is React Router v6, like I said. And this is actually kind of structured quite well. It's not always easy to look at open source tools. There's so many packages, so many things going on. But in this case, we have our packages. It's a monorepo, Lerna monorepo. We have our packages. We have the three. So React Router is kind of the core router. I assume this is just works across the different environments. This is the core logic. And then we have a layer above, or the two layers above, which is either React Router DOM, which is specific, assuming additional specific things for DOM, and then native. So we can ignore native. We'll probably look at DOM, and probably, I'm assuming we'll jump into React Router. Within React Router DOM, we have server and node main and index. I think we can ignore server because we're not looking at. Yeah, so this is a static router, and I guess the static router will just delegate to a router, which is from React Router DOM, in fact. So we can ignore the server one. Node main is just for production or development builds. That's fine. Let's look at index, right? And this is a few hundred lines. It's not too bad. And in fact here, major please read me. You can ignore this. They have basically one file with all the exports. Is that the same for React Router? Yeah, they have all the components, everything in one file, which is interesting. But I mean, it definitely makes it easier to find things, right? You don't need to go about, but just yeah, not really seen it done like this before. But yeah, this public API for resting. Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's look for our router then. So our router is, or it came from browser router as router from React DOM. So if we look for, I guess, browser router, oops. Well, actually, I assume there's going to be a browser router in here. Yeah, there we go. This is the browser router. So this is basically what we are looking for. Let's see, the comment: a router for use in browsers provides the cleanest URLs. Perfect. Okay, there's not actually much going on here at all. This is 20 lines. So browser router, we have a reference to history. Why do I write a ref and not state? Maybe because they don't need to re-render, or they're so when you're working with refs, typically it's obviously if you're kind of want to pass a ref into an input or a component from a different library, but also refs don't trigger re-renders. So maybe there's something there. Anyways, first thing we're doing is creating the browser history. So there is a history in the browser, and the history object itself here has, now it's interesting, you can't actually, I don't think you can access the history directly. So you can see there's a length of 9. So if I long click on the back button, I can see, that's my daughter trying to come in. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There is 9. It's not showing the full history, I think. So yeah, since I opened the browser, there's 9. So if I do a hard refresh, I wonder if this, no, it's still 9. I wonder if it's, if I go open up a new tab and I look at history here, will it be 1? Yeah, okay, so it's 2. So I guess it's nothing is the first one, then this is the second one. And what you can do anyways is, so if I go about and then back to home, that should be 4. And you can basically, history, you can get a length, you can go back and forward, and you can go to a specific point in history. So I guess go is, you can go delta, so -1 takes you 1 back, +1 takes you 1 forward, and then yeah, forward and back does the same. It's just I guess functions for that. And then you have kind of, yeah, push state. I'm not actually sure exactly what else there is. Push state, replace state, state itself. Yeah, a few other things going on here which we don't need to get into just now. Try to keep this as kind of basic as possible. In terms of the URL, we have, like we said, the location. Which, yeah, we don't need to worry about that too much. Okay, so the create browser history comes from the history package, and there's a few things going on here. So history, again, similar. It's monorepo history, but it does have different types of history, I guess, depending on where you are. If it's browser, hash history, yeah, different types of histories. The one that we're looking for is the browser history. Browser history stores the location in the regular URLs. This is standard for most web apps. It requires some configuration in the server to ensure you serve the same app on multiple URLs. So I guess this is doing a few things here, and I don't think we need to go into too much detail here, but I guess it's some sort of abstracted, similar concept to the browser history, but it's abstracted away. I think the problem with the browser history is that each different environment, I think even each different browser might have slightly different implementations. And then of course, if you're not on a browser, that doesn't work. If you're on React Native or server, that's also not going to work. Cool. So we can see things here. So we can see the state. I guess we can see, or if you scroll down a bit, we can see a few helper functions to getting the states in the URLs. You can see the replace history. Here we go. So this is, I guess, the object that's going to be return history. So yeah, you can see the go, back, forward. You've got a listener on it. I'm not sure what create href is. I guess it's a help. That's the helper function to create paths. And you have actions, and the action, I guess that's obviously when you're moving back and forth. Do you want to replace the existing URL, or do you want to add it to the stack of history, etc.? So yeah, I'm not going to kind of dive too much into that, but I guess, yeah, it's a more abstract history that works across different environments. Is the main thing there. So we jump back to React Router and we go to, what was it, browser router. All it's doing is creating history, adding a state here, which is the action and the location, adding the listener, and then rendering a router and passing in the history as the navigator, and then the location, the action, and any children. Okay, so this is basically providing a context with the history and the location, which makes sense, right? Because it's, yeah, so in our little clone, we don't actually need this at all because we can just rely on the browser history and location. But the idea here is that it's initializing the kind of a global history and location, and it's passing it down. And this router comes from, I assume this router comes from React Router, which is here. Can I click through into that? It's not gonna like it. I'm assuming it's because it's not all. Why is that not like? Because I need to probably, yeah, install everything and build it, which I've not done. Next up, let's jump into here and quickly have a look at the router. Router here. Yeah, the router here is quite small as well. Invariant, what's invariant doing? I think this is just a TypeScript thing. I always find this TypeScript so strange. So this is a function that basically says it's a certain condition. It basically tells TypeScript that it's going to return. It's going to return this, and if it doesn't, it throws an error. I don't know. It's a bit weird. But this is just making sure that, yeah, you cannot render a router within router. That's fine. All it's doing here is, I guess, it's just returning a context, and it's providing the navigator, which is the history. So this is basically the history, and then it's providing the location, and that's it. Is it doing anything else? No, that's no. Location, context. Static's false. Static, okay, which is false in this case. Yeah, so just kind of a wrapper for the history and location context. So that's all we have in the router. Next up, so we don't actually need to do much here. Roots and root. So let's jump to roots. This is probably a bit more interesting. Oh, is it not here? Roots from React Router DOM. So roots, yeah. So I guess. Okay, so React Router DOM only really adds the router, the top level router, and the state. It doesn't really, and links as well. That makes sense. We should have a look at the links as well. We'll come back to that. Root, the roots and the root. Yeah. So if we look at the roots, that's nothing to do. That's nothing specific to the browser. So that's going to be in React Router, I guess. So this roots function here. So a container for a nested tree of roots, and remember you can have multiple roots, as in multiple of this roots component within a router. So I can have this, and then I can have within the about. I think I can just add another roots here for nested roots. I think that's right. And then I can use the, in React Router v6, I guess, the outlet component to actually render those. So roots takes in the base name. In this case, we're going to keep the base name empty. So the children, the location, which we don't pass in. I wonder if that's just going to be null. Where does that get passed in from? Well, we're not passing that in, and it's not defaulting to anything. But it's optional as well. So these are all optional. So create roots from children. Create roots from children. Creates a root config from a React children object, which is usually either a root element or array of them used internally by the roots to create a root config from its children. I see. Okay. That's interesting. So yeah, actually, I did read about this because there's a programmatic way to pass in the roots. It doesn't need to be decorative like this. You can actually create a JSON object, I think, or something like that. So it seems like this is the root component itself doesn't do anything. Wait, does it do anything? The roots object is the one that goes through the children and builds this object. Maybe just the roots is just responsible for rendering. So we're going through all the children here, checking if it's a valid element. Ignore element, that's fine. Checking if it's a fragment, transform export children. So it's still going to push. Okay, so still this is just, I guess, for nested components. It's going to get, so this is actually diving deep all the nested components as well. That's what I guess React children does that. So this React children is a helper method from React, which goes through all the children in a nested fashion. So it's not just the top level. And then root is getting the path, case sensitive. In our case, it's not. Element.props.index. And the element. And then it's going through the children, creating the root again. And finally, it's basically just pushing the roots. So it's going through all the roots that it finds nested and basically just pushing them roots. And the roots are basically the path, the element is all we care about. I believe the rest are, in fact, everything is optional. But I guess we can add an index. I'm not actually sure what the index does. Yeah, that's not going to autocomplete there, but I'm not quite sure what the index does. Well, maybe we'll see it later on. So let's go back up here. So we're in the roots component. Now we have, I guess, an object, a list of roots which has got all the paths and the elements to display. And this is, I guess, this is a flattened root. And then we jump into use roots, which we pass in the root. These are going to be null for us. Use roots, what does this do? So it returns the element of the root that matches the current location, prepared with the correct context to render the remainder of the root tree. Root elements in the root tree must render an outlet to render it. Yeah, of course, cool. So it looks like this is doing actually the rendering as well, which I'm a bit confused because I'm not sure what the root does. So invariant, yeah, we're just checking that this is inside a root component. This takes in the roots, so we have let root path name and params. We're getting the root context here. Where is the root context being initialized? There we go. Okay. And then if dev, we'll get warning about the roots. I guess we can ignore this dev thing for now. This is just a warning. Okay. Express services. Okay, so it's talking about the start. Okay, so we can ignore that for now. Getting the location from the context, which may or may not be there. Actually, no, that's a lie. Sorry, the location will be there. That comes from the router. Base name for matching. If there's base name, in our case, there isn't. It's checking. It's matching the roots here. I guess it's got yeah. So replace the base name and check. Base name should be case sensitive. Check the path name that starts with base. That's fine. Flatten roots, rank roots, spreads. Yeah, this. So I'm not going to go into too much here. Compute score. Wow. But there's definitely a fair few things going on here in terms of how it's ranking how it's deciding which roots to render first. And this is a kind of, I guess this is a change between V5 and V6, where in V5 you had to pass in the exact flag and you had to worry about the order, and you had the switch component to make sure things only rendered once and matched the right thing. In this case here, it seems like it's basically handling all that for us. and then it's returning match root branch, returning matches, which is root match. Yes, it's returning all the matched roots basically. So I'm not going to dive into too much of that logic. But basically they've got their algorithm for figuring out which roots are matched from all the root components, and then if it matches, basically it's going to return that as an object, as a list. So that takes us all the way back to here. If there's no matches, that's fine, don't render anything. But then you're going to take the matches, reduce right. So reduce right is very exactly the same as reduce, but we're just starting from the right hand side, and we're going to basically pass in the outlet. So we're basically going to render it from the deepest component up the way, I guess, or maybe it's the top down, depending on how the roots have been changed. But yeah, basically, yeah, put that into kind of a nested component form and render it out. Okay, so it's actually that's interesting. So there's the roots component here that does all the heavy lifting. So I wonder what the root component is doing. I'm gonna replay this music because I can't seem to hear any of it as well. Oh well, I don't think I can hear that. The music, let me quit that a second. I got back up. Bear with me a second. Let me shuffle this again, see if that does anything. So that's all right. Okay. So it looks like roots is doing the heavy lifting. All right, so let's have a quick look at root in that case, and let's see if that's actually doing anything. And then I think that'll be me. What am I looking for? So root is, I believe, also in the React router component. Root here. The closing element that should be rendered a certain URL path. Router. Yeah, there we go. Root does absolutely nothing. That's really interesting. So that invariant false. If not false, i.e. true, then a router is only ever used. Okay, so this is basically just kind of like a placeholder. We can hear the music. Cool, nice one. I cannot hear the music. I'm assuming it's the AirPods, and yeah, I was wearing the bigger, the kind of the Beats ones previously, but it just gets a bit too warm with the Beats ones, so maybe I need to find one with a cable or something along those lines. But I'll just leave it as is. So the root component here doesn't do anything. It's just a placeholder for the props, and the props are actually taken by the roots component, and the context comes from the router. And there you go. There you have it. The final thing I want to look into actually very quickly is the link. And I mean, the link is pretty much just, it's literally just an A tag. It fixes up the the link itself, href to pass in. So it fixes that up. It passes in I guess it's just forwarding the target, adding a ref. On click is, if there is an on click, it's just passing it in as well. Internal on click. What is that doing? Handles the click behavior for a root link. This is useful if you need to create custom link components with the same click behavior. Oh, okay, so we can ignore that for now as well. So it's pretty much just rendering an A tag. Okay, cool. So this is cool, of course. Now we've just looked over the browser side. This is DOM specific. They've obviously got the React Native side, which will have its equivalents, but I don't know too much about that. So what we'll do quickly then is, I guess, just do a bit of work to get this working in a similar, very yeah, I guess very lightweight version, but similar-ish concept to React Router. And hopefully if we can get that, then that's probably a good place to stop. And the idea here again, so if I refresh this, this should not be working. Why is this working? Do I need to yarn remove? Oh, I think I need to rerun this guy. Perform dependencies imported but can't be. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to remove React Router DOM. Play this. Okay, so that's down. So this is running. And this is going to be broken because it can't find the components. Router is not defined. So let's define router. And we know that router, let's convert this, and convert this. Cool. So let's add router here. Now we know that router is basically not doing anything other than providing the context. So we can just, for the sake of this, we'll just take the children and we'll just return the children. Let's comment all these out. Just do hi. So we'll start bit by bit. So we're returning the children for the router. That's fine. And now we want to get to the, well, let's get the links as well. So a link, create function, component link, takes in the props. Let's move the link up here. So the link is basically going to take in, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take in rest, because I'm just going to take in all the props. I'm just going to render an A tag, and I'm going to spread in the props here. Now the only difference here is that React Router it's got this 2, right? So let's actually take out 2, whereas in A it's actually href. Now React Router of course does some oops, not like that. React Router of course parses the 2 field, and it creates the href itself, and it fixes things, right? Which is the ideal. So that's ideally what we do. But in this case, again, small app like this, just as a proof of concept, that's not going to matter to us. So I have here rendered a home and about link. What's that? No idea. But if I open up the element here, let's have a quick look at the code. We can just see ahref. I mean, that's exactly what we had before. But of course, if I were to put an about here, that's not fixing it like it did. And I'm assuming if we're nested, etc., or I don't know the difference, how it handles basically absolute and relative path. Maybe it just handles all for you, which we're not, but that's fine. So home and about is now working fine. About, perfect. The final 2 steps. So root is the next 2 components. So root, in fact, we know is basically does nothing. It literally does nothing. So we can actually just do this, because the root is just going to render the null. Let's take this up here. The actual important one here is the roots component, and the roots component is basically, let's take this out here, roots component. The roots component, let's do that, const, oops, roots is equal to, sorry, let me just get back to screen so I can read the chat. The root is going to take in the children, is the only one we care about, I think. And what we're going to do is so React dot, we want to use the React helper method to go over the children. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go over the children. What they do in React Router, we just saw, they build up this tree, they build up this object, this list, and then they use that list to then, I mean, that's how they basically find all the matching roots, and they do a bit of logic on that, and they might do additional kind of parsing or additional filtering that we didn't look at, but they process it in any way, and then they pass that in to render it. So they basically get their roots and then they render the roots. We don't need to go that far. We can just do a quick map to get absolute basics, right? And React children. So we're going to go over the children, and then we're going to take in basically a map function. So in this case, we're going to take each child, and I guess what we'll do here is we'll just assume there's only going to be root components right under. So we take each child, and we can assume here safely that each child's going to have a path. So we can do, I guess we can just basically check if the path, yeah, we can do what we did earlier on. So we can basically say location.path. Let me think about this. If that includes the child.props.path, which I think that's right, then return child.props.element. You don't need to add return there. Otherwise, return null. And I think that is that it. That's definitely not it. That's not working. Location of path name. Let's see what that gives us. So roots, nothing's returned from roots. So that's fine. Let's have a look at. Cool. So I wasn't actually sure about this. So let's comment this out. Let's return. Does it need to be? Yeah, I'm not sure what needs to be here. Let's return hi, just to make sure something's working in this component. Of course, because I've not actually got a return here. Let's do this. Is that right? Return. Save this. Cool. So we got two highs. Let me just quickly check if that was working. I just forgot to return the return. Cool. So interestingly enough, we do have something which is expected, and this is where you can kind of see straight away. Let me remove the braces there and remove the braces there. So of course with the home it's returning because it matches slash, and about, guess what, it matches slash and about, right? So really what we don't want it to match slash, and this is where they have their kind of algorithm, and you can start passing exact stuff, exact true, and check the equality, but then it won't match nested things, and you can figure that out. For now I'm just going to add ends with, and because it could be, let's just add ends with. So if it ends with slash or nothing, it renders home. If it ends with about, it renders about, which is perfect. And that's pretty much it, I think. One final thing I actually want to try is, can we quickly just render, very naively again, can we render another roots component here? How does that work? So let's just do slash test and slash. Well, I guess what you could do here is about slash test and about slash another, and let's just do here, let's do test another, test another, and test and another. Let's see if that works. So this should in theory work. So slash about, and then if we go to slash about slash test, that does not work, and that's because it ends in and that is because, well, let's log this out as well. Console.log location.path name, and we'll log child.props.path for all these. Actually, let's also do this. So we can see that we have about/test. About, it's actually not going through the children. I thought it would. Of course, because it doesn't render it. So what we need to do here is we either need to see that it ends with the path, or it includes the path, maybe. Yeah. So now you're just, without kind of something sophisticated, you're kind of just hacking about at this point. We could do includes, but then that's going to include the home one. Let's see, how else could we do this? If there's a quick way, equal to or includes. No, okay. I'm pretty sure there's a nice quick way to do it, but you get a picture here. Let's just return it back to the previous way. I think this is fine, and I'll keep it as this. I think that's good enough. We'll remove these guys. I think there's definitely a few ways you can kind of get around that, but for now, I'm not too bothered. Let's just do ends with. So why is this now not working? What have I done here? Just undo everything. I'll probably put in some logic somewhere that I've forgotten to remove. There we go. And I've gone too far. So let's just get to this point here, and I think the final thing I did was just change that to ends with, yeah. So of course, because I've got the, yeah. So that's another thing. That's not going to work if we do /test here. But yeah, I think this is and. Yeah, good shout. See, yeah, it could have been an and, yeah, ampersand for sure. That would have worked. Includes, and yeah, that would also match the home one. That's the only problem, right? So it starts to get complicated, because if you want to match, yeah, you basically want to do a fair bit of logic around how you want to match things. And yeah, you start playing around with regular expressions. I think we could we could spend all day trying to figure out the best way to do that. But I guess the gist of it is still here. This one matches, just like that. And I think that's probably good enough for now. Let's just do a slash here. I'm surprised that actually works without the. Oh yeah, because it's included. It ends with, yeah. So that's absolutely fine. So I think that's it. This is a very minimal version of, okay, the most simple version of React Router, right? Different pages. It's got the links. It's got the roots. Nested roots don't quite work here. We could spend another, I'm sure, half an hour, and get a nice kind of some simple logic to match something that works. But yeah, I mean, I think that's as simple as it gets. React Router, of course, adds a fair bit on top of this, and it's got the different environments and everything that helps in the context, etc. So I think Ryan Florence and Michael Jackson, everyone else, the guys that work on React Router, and they've done a great job there. So yeah, I think I'm gonna kind of probably just call it there. Hopefully that wasn't just under an hour. That's about right. And yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for tuning in, Asim, and everyone else. And I'll be hopefully back with another live next week. I'm trying to get these done weekly, just about whatever pops into my head or whatever I'm working on. And I might just put a kind of maybe a shorter video of this out this week. Just kind of a few minutes, just to kind of keep that concept for people that don't want to watch an hour stream of me figuring things out, but just a quick router clone. And yeah, I'll call it there. So thanks very much for joining, and I will see you guys next time. I'll see you around, and have a good day, morning, evening, wherever it is you are. Take care. Bye.